Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for another press conference. With me, I do have Dr. Tamara Hublich-Little from the Department of Education, Lifelong Learning, and also Dr. Morrison has joined us as well. And they may have, people may have some questions at the end, the media, and they'll be open for questions. So based on the recent press conference with the Premier and Dr. Morrison, we do have some implications for our schools, most notably Charlottetown Rural, Bluefield High, and Colonel Gray High, and also on behalf of our colleagues from the CSLF, Francois Beaut. These 4 schools will be moving to remote learning this week, but I do want to be clear that remote learning doesn't start tomorrow. Teachers and staff will need some time to get prepared. So teachers will be getting prepared for remote learning at school tomorrow. And parents and students should expect contact from teachers on Tuesday about the plans going forward. I also want to note that special education programming will be available for students with special education needs, and these details will be released on Tuesday as well. I also want to note that across the board in all our 56 schools, based on the recent announcement, before and after school activities will be paused for the 2-week period, as well as community use of facilities. I do want to remind parents and students as well, busing for the schools affected tomorrow will change for other schools as well. What I mean by that is that the times may be a little different, very similar to when we have exams at high school and students from elementary and intermediate may share busing. The times may be a little earlier tomorrow, so just be prepared for that. A few other points I wanted to make. School websites and social media platforms for the 3 large high schools in the PSB will have information for parents and students as we go forward this week. A reminder too, packing a lunch is always a great idea, but it's even more important now as options for our intermediate students are limited due to restrictions on dining inside restaurants. So eating in the school is going to be more essential now than ever. And I would also say these changes do put a great deal of operational constraints on our system, and the situation is fluid, so I would remind people to always keep their ear to the ground and listen for any changes that may come on suddenly. Thank you, and if the media have questions, all 3 of us are open for questions now.
Travis Kingdon, CBC.
Hi there. Thanks for taking our questions. A quick question for you, Norbert. The way it sounds there, online learning starts Tuesday. Does that mean students will be back in the classroom kind of as normal tomorrow?
No, just to clarify, there are no classes for students at those 3 schools and the 4th, Francois Beaut, for tomorrow.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification. First question, are you considering testing any of the students or staff at those 4 schools that are closing?
That would not be my intent, and I may defer that question to Dr. Morrison.
Hi, Travis. So really only would be testing at this point students in those schools if they have symptoms. And I think I'd like to take the chance to clarify the earlier comment around testing for those who are 20 to 29 years of age. So anyone in that age group, 20 to 29, if you have symptoms, even if they're mild, and I think sometimes when you're between 20 and 29, you may ignore some of those symptoms, it's really important to get tested. And then also, if in that age group for those 20 to 29, if you don't have any symptoms, and especially if you're living with other people who are in that same 20 to 29-year-old age category, consider getting tested, and we would recommend getting tested over the next days. So not everyone has to go out tomorrow, but over the coming days, we would really like to test as much as possible. The other thing is in that, and we've been asked this since the last briefing, is for those who are going that do not have symptoms in that age category, you do not need to isolate until the test results come back. You can continue on without self-isolating as long as you do not have symptoms.
Perfect. And just a quick follow-up question for you there, Dr. Morrison. Because this is the 20 to 29 age range, some of those people might not have access to a vehicle. Maybe you could tell us a bit about, for those who need or want to get those tests and don't have access to a vehicle, what services are available for them?
So, I mean, it's a good question. It's come up at various times during the pandemic. And if someone is unable to get to the testing clinic, and for instance, if they have symptoms and transportation is an issue, we have arranged for mobile integrated health. So with help and assistance and support from our EMS colleagues to go to someone's house and assist. If you do not have any symptoms, especially you could take public transit, but make sure you wear a mask and keep 6 feet away, or the back of a taxi and sit in the back with your mask on and seek services. So those are options for testing, but I know it's a challenge for some people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Allison Jenkins, The Guardian.
Yes, good evening. A couple of questions about students who will be continuing in classes, so the junior high students and elementary, particularly junior high students. Will they still be allowed off property? I know you had mentioned packing lunches. Is that because you expect students will no longer be allowed to leave for lunch?
So firstly, they will have limited opportunities based on the conditions at restaurants changing under the advice of the CPHO. So at this point, we are encouraging students to stay on site for lunch. We're not saying they're not allowed to leave at this point, but like I said, the situation does change, and if we need to update that guidance, we will update that guidance.
Oh, thank you very much. And so my next question is about field trips. I know some of the elementary schools are planning field trips. Are they still a go?
So that's a question that we'll discuss with administration probably through the next few hours. But right now, at this point, we'd have to know the nature of the field trip and the logistics of where they would be going. If it was a nature walk close to school property, then of course that probably could continue. But heading to a venue that had limitations based on our most recent information, then the answer would be no to that.
We're not going to know tonight then. It'll be more for in the morning. The kids will find out, I suppose.
Correct.
After you've had a chance to talk it over. Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Carrie Wynn McLeod, Ocean 100.
Good afternoon, all. I guess my question would either be for Dr. Morrison and or Norbert. I'm just wondering, can you just explain the relation between the testing for the 20 to 29-year-olds, yet it's the schools, the high schools that are being affected, which is, a younger age group, particularly with the school in Bluefield, why that is closing in relation to what's happening in the capital region.
So I'll take the first part, Carrie Wynn, because it is in the capital region that we are concerned about the cases. And those three schools have very large populations, as does some of our intermediate schools. However, the difference between intermediate schools and high schools at this point is the ability to cohort. And high schools, the three mentioned, it's very, very difficult to cohort in a way that would mitigate the risk if there were potential cases. So that's why there is a distinction between the intermediate and the high school, and it has everything to do with programming and the nature of how high school runs. So out of an abundance of caution, we do want to make sure we're doing everything we can from the PSB in conjunction with the CPHO. So that's the reason.
Hi, Carrie Wynn. And I'll just add to that. Really, the testing for the that we're talking about for that particular age group really has to do with the cases that we've been seeing, and also what we know around the country about that rising number and increased number of cases in that age group. So it is really, it's not connected to those particular high schools themselves at all. It's they were sort of separate, but I can see why you would ask that question for sure.
Thank you. I guess my next question would probably be for Tammy. So the teachers will be in school tomorrow, adjusting to prepare to teach the students at home. Some changes that have to happen there. What exactly does have to happen tomorrow, and what changes need to be done at this point in order for the students to be ready to learn from home on Tuesday, Tammy?
Hi, Carrie Wynn. So it's fair to say that we've been anticipating this for several months, and we've been preparing for this. Having said that, the execution of a plan, as well as it may be laid out, does require time. So teachers will be finalizing those plans tomorrow. We didn't know when this would happen, and so the plans do need to be adjusted to take that into consideration. So teachers will be working to finalize those plans to connect with their students on Tuesday, and so for families to review the website's social media if they do have challenges in accessing information on Google Classroom, just to understand what the expectations will be going forward, what they can expect, and that information will be available to students in a variety of ways. Hopefully they'll have access to the Google Sites and Google Classrooms, but if students find themselves in a situation where they need to access a device and have one provided for them, they should contact the school, and those plans will be put in place starting Tuesday.
Great, thank you.
Shane Ross, CBC.
Hi. I think my questions have been answered, so I'm not going to ask one for the sake of asking, but thanks for taking our questions.
Laurent Rigaud, Lavoie.
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to know if tomorrow the École Francois Beaut will be open for all the grades and to the 9th, or everything will be closed tomorrow?
The grades primary to 9 would be open at Francois Beaut tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And maybe you answered that, but I didn't catch it. Is the school lunch program, will it continue during the 2 weeks, or is it paused?
Yes, school lunch programs, and there is some variance. The provincial school lunch program would continue. I think ordering may be closed at this point for this week, but school-by-school lunch programs would operate as per the norm.
Thank you.
Julien Lecachère, Radio Canada. Julien Lecachère, Radio Canada.
I think that may be.
Yep. Thank you for your questions, and everyone have a good night.